Hey, so for those who aren't super up to date on the channel news, you may be surprised to learn that I spent the entirety of August and September working in Kotzebue, Alaska, which, in case you don't know, is just a tiny little backwater town about 30 miles north of the Arctic Circle. So let's talk about that. This video was supposed to be about a silly little experience that I have lovingly dubbed the bear story, but I couldn't quite fit that tale into a concise, compelling script, so I'll just give you the long and short of it. The basic rundown is that I spent the better part of a day in an abandoned campsite on the top of a mountain, surrounded by grizzly bears. And I was completely on my own too, aside from the Glock and the AR-15 our pilots had graciously given me before flying away, neither of which I knew how to use. Did I mention I was out of my element up here? They did give me a brief crash course before heading out, but it essentially boiled down to point and shoot. So if anything went wrong while I was pointing and or shooting, then I would have been bear food. But anyway, let's move on to a much lower stakes story. So what I was actually doing up there, aside from tempting my fate with the grizzlies, was transporting people around. Over the course of the season, various hunters, hikers, and other outdoorsy type guys would show up at the Kotzebue airport. I would take them from the airport to the hangar, where our pilots would fly them into the field and about 7 days later back into town. Which admittedly doesn't sound like much when you say it like that, but when we first got up there, everything we needed was either molded over, rusted up, or broken down. We even showed up about a week early just to get it all fixed, but apparently that wasn't nearly long enough, since it was still in pretty rough shape even by the time that the clients started pouring in. Like the hangar, which didn't have any electricity, despite the fact that we needed power in order to fuel up our planes. So obviously we had to use a generator, and for that we had two options. One was newer, more compact, and more efficient, but it was also a lot more broken. So we went with our second option, a massive, hulking beast of a machine that's about as loud as a jet turbine with a flair for the dramatic, since the moment our planes touched down, the moment we needed it most, it ran out of gas, bone dry. But like, no big deal, right? I mean, our clients had already been waiting for nearly 4.5 hours, so what's a couple more minutes while we drive down to the gas station? What's the worst that could possibly happen? The town was out of gas. The entire town. Kotzebue has 2 gas stations, and both of them were out of gas. It was kind of funny too, because when I asked the cashier about it, all he had to say was like, oh yeah, that happens sometimes. Anyway, our pilot eventually decided to take matters into his own hands by fueling the generator with a little bit of jet fuel. And if that sounds like a bad idea, then don't worry, because he was also smoking a cigarette at the time, so the 2 bad ideas canceled out and made a good one. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today, but I'm sure if I ever get around to making more videos like this, then you'll get plenty of other Alaska stories. But until then, don't die. See you later.
Please explain to me how an entire town can be out of gasoline, and what do? You gotta call in the National Guard to drop it off from like a fucking helicopter or something?